Hello all my binky bunnies, and how are you doing today? If you couldn't tell by the name Just for Bun, my channel is all about rabbits, so if you were into the bunny life, then please hit the like and subscribe button below. Today we're going to be talking about bonding. I wanted to apologize that this video is really late. I bit off more than I could chew because, as most of you know, I'm new to making videos, obviously, so I wanted to kind of incorporate pictures and videos of other people's rabbits, but I didn't account for like the editing and the fact that I suck at it. So it'll probably take me a little while to get this video up, so I know that I am past due and I do apologize for that. But anywho, I do see a lot of people online, and obviously I've experienced myself that have or are having trouble with bonding, and I see a lot of people get defeated or say that they are feeling that way and that they're really stressed. And I felt that way. There were times when I cried myself to sleep at night because I just didn't know and I didn't really understand, and it was a really stressful time because I felt like I was putting my rabbits under a lot of stress. And then once it was all said and done and I ended up learning a lot from what I went through, I realized that most of the things that were happening weren't as big of a deal as I was kind of making them into. So I wanted this to be more of like a one-on-one video. All the parts of it are going to be clips and photos at some point when we start talking about different things, but I didn't want this to be just like other bonding videos where I'm just throw the bonding process at you. I wanted us to kind of really connect, and my cat's outside my door meowing. I just wanted to really be able to connect with you guys and let you know that you're not alone, and all of the pictures and videos, some of them are my rabbits, but a lot of them are other people's rabbits, so many other people have gone through this, and they're not all bunny gurus online who can just, you know, put rabbits together and it goes well. And even though all they're going to show you is the parts that go well, there can be a lot of times afterwards that those things can go downhill. So we're kind of going to discuss different techniques and things like that. So anyway, to start off, I just want to say how much less stressful it's going to be for you guys if you always have the space for your rabbits when they aren't together. So you want your rabbits to be together, and that's great, but make sure that if something doesn't go right or it's not happening the way you plan for it, that you always have space for them to be separate and have something that's going to work for you in that way too, because it's going to take a lot of stress off of you, and sometimes even bonded couples can fight and need to be rebonded. So just always having that extra space or that extra cage or X pen that you can set up if you need it, or a way to separate whatever enclosure they have, or if they're free roam that you can put them in separate rooms, it's gonna make it a lot less stressful. So if you guys are here watching this video, I'm gonna assume that you probably already have 1 or 2 rabbits, but if you don't, you can totally skip this whole process. You can go to your local shelter and you can get a pair of rabbits that are already bonded. It is important to make sure that those rabbits are adult rabbits and that they are preferably both spayed, because if they are like siblings that are still very young, it's very likely that once they age a little bit that they are going to start fighting. Now, if you already have 1 rabbit and you would like to get another to potentially bond them together, you can again go to your local shelter and they will actually have bunny dates. You do want to make sure that your rabbit is already spayed and neutered to help with the chances of this going well. And they actually will set you up on bunny dates so your rabbit can meet other rabbits, and maybe they'll hit it off, maybe they'll fight right away, but you'll know what could potentially be a good bond. And you can sometimes also have vets or other people bond rabbits for you. Around here, rabbits are definitely not really popular, so I'm definitely not going to find anything like that for myself. But if it's a thing that you can have access to, use it. Duh. And of course, lastly, if you already have 2 rabbits, the first and most important thing to do is have them spayed or neutered, and then wait out the time period, which is usually about a month, for their hormones to die down, some people don't want to get their rabbits spayed or neutered and they are having a lot of trouble, but you do have a rabbit that's going to have a healthier, longer life. They're going to have better litter habits, and they're going to be less aggressive, which, mind blown, is obviously going to help with the whole bonding thing. So if that all isn't appealing to you, I really don't know what else to tell you. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit of some different techniques and a little bit of my own rabbits for a second here, just so you kind of understand where I'm personally coming from and why I prefer to kind of do something for the long haul instead of something really rushed. So for me personally, why I prefer to have a slower bonding process and getting to know my rabbits is because when I first got both of my rabbits, this was my setup. Opal, my white bunny, was extremely afraid of everything because she was abused, and my other rabbit, Ruby, has always just kind of been chill and very loving. When I first got them, I probably could have bonded them, and Opal would have been constantly cuddling Ruby, and they may have been really close in that way because Opal was always very fearful. But over time, which was about a year and a half, Opal really came out of her shell and got used to me and other animals. She never became aggressive towards humans, but she did become extremely aggressive towards other animals, cats, my other rabbit, and if I would have bonded them before thinking that they were really cuddly and in love, it most likely would have eventually turned bad when Opal actually became comfortable in her environment. So for me, I would always rather have two rabbits that are very comfortable in their environment and very secure in their own personalities so that I can know how compatible they actually are. One of the things I learned from having a really tough bonding pair is that some people just give up on a bond way too easily. It did take me 2 years to bond my rabbits, who have two totally different personalities, but it is possible, and you also do still need to realize if there's ever a point in time that you need to separate them, that it may be for the best of both rabbits to do so. So the first thing you're actually going to want to start with is pre-bonding. So this is the point where you can switch items in their cages, like stuffed animals and other toys, so that they can get used to the other rabbit's scent. You can also start to put their cages up against each other, or you can switch their litter boxes. This can cause their litter box habits to get out of hand, so there might be a while where you're cleaning up messes, but this whole thing is just a chance for you to see how they react to each other. Are they aggressive towards their stuffed animals? When you put the cage next to each other, are they aggressive towards the other rabbit? Or are they very comfortable trying to groom each other through the bars, or flopping down and relaxing? You'll kind of get a feel for how they're going to react to each other when you actually put them together. As you can see there, the one rabbit's being aggressive and the other rabbit was trying to chin them. Although rabbits are very cute and cuddly, they can actually do a lot of damage to each other and to you. So before we actually get to the point where we want to start putting our rabbits together, please make sure that you're wearing gloves or you have some sort of dustpan to separate your rabbits if needed, as you will soon see rabbits can be extremely aggressive towards each other. In situations like this, you'll also be well prepared to gently separate them with a dustpan, gently separate them with your hands, or gently separate them by putting something like a blanket and removing one or the other bunny. Once you reach the pre-bonding stages where both of the rabbits no longer seem to be as aggressive towards each other and or are ignoring each other, you can move on to stress bonding or force bonding, which always wants to be done in neutral areas. So make sure for all types of bonding to identify neutral areas around your home. Forest bonding can include car rides, being in a carrier together, being in a tub together, or being placed on a washer or dryer together in some sort of basket. These are all places that your rabbit kind of is on a slippery surface or is forced to cuddle with one another. They might be a little bit fearful in some of these areas, which will kind of distract them from wanting to attack each other or be super aggressive. This is a video clip from somebody on the Facebook page that I'm part of a group in, and this actually seems to be going really well. You can see that one rabbit is bowing her head a lot, kind of asking for pets or being more submissive. You can see that a lot of times they end up ignoring each other, they turn their back on each other, they kind of walk in separate ways.
You just keep trying them.
A quick tip for these sort of situations, aside from forcibly putting them together and making them cuddle, you could also try something like putting a tiny bit of banana on their forehead, which will encourage them to groom each other. I wouldn't do that if they were still at very aggressive stages, but at a point like this where each rabbit seems to be non-aggressive and kind of showing a lot of positive signs, it could be something to try to encourage them to start the grooming process. So once I finish showing you guys the steps, I am going to show you positive and negative behavior, but I feel like you will know more what positive behavior looks like. So once you start getting a lot of positive responses from your rabbit, you're going to be able to increase the space. So you'll still want to keep this as a neutral area and be sure that you have a lot of different areas that you're able to try, because variety is key here. You may find that your rabbits get along better in the small areas, or you may find that your rabbits get along in larger areas, and you're really going to want to use this time to your advantage. I find that a lot of people end up giving up on spaces that have been working for them. So my rabbits got along in really small areas. So I actually did do a lot of bonding in the bathtub. At one point, I think I had them in the bathtub for about 5 or 6 hours a day, because that was just a place that worked for them. Due to my white rabbit being very territorial and very food aggressive, smaller areas were just something that really worked out for them, and it kept the chasing, any biting or nipping, if there was any at all, to a minimum. Once I finished in the bathtub for several hours a day and I felt comfortable putting them together overnight, I used what is on the screen in a second here, which was just a baby gate. So they were together in this baby playpen for probably about 2 months, which wasn't like a good thing for the small area, but it was really good because it was a space that they got along really well. And after I used that really small space for several months, I was able to slowly upgrade to 2x4, to 4x4, 4x8, and eventually I was able to expand. I think the limit that I stopped at, because I would get negative behavior no matter what I did, was about 8x10. Some rabbits do just have food aggression or are aggressive over larger areas, and they won't be able to have free roam, which was how my rabbits were. So as you can see right now, I think they were in about 8x6, and Opal was kind of just doing her own thing, playing by herself, and I was eventually able to get to this stage by really using to my advantage the spaces that worked for me. Although a small area was the key to my success, many other people find success in larger areas or high traffic areas, such as their living room, where there's lots of distractions for their bunnies. Please also keep in mind the huge age difference between my rabbits, so things that I might have been comfortable doing with other rabbits, I was not comfortable doing with my own rabbits due to possible injury to the elder. So I've kind of broken some of the behaviors that you're probably going to see into different categories: positive, negative, and neutral. First, we'll talk about positive behaviors, which are things like ignoring each other, turning and facing away because you would never turn your back on your enemies. You would never turn your back on your enemies. Grooming each other, flopping, relaxing, laying down next to each other are positive signs. And also sharing food, because who shares food with people that they don't like? Nobody, right? It's also a good distraction. So those are all things that are positive. I feel like you're going to know those signs when you see them, so I don't really have to get like super in depth with them. So I made this chart just to kind of break things into different categories for you and help you kind of understand body language or bunny behavior a little better, because some of the things that are in the neutral area are perfectly normal. They can still seem or appear to be really scary, but it's just really important to try your best to learn the difference. There is a lot of first introduction videos that you can watch online that will kind of show you different behaviors and the way that different rabbits are going to react to one another, but I'll try my best to explain it to you guys a little bit here in this video. So the first thing to understand is that rabbits are not really vocal creatures, so most of all of their behavior is going to be shown by physical actions. So I'm just going to try to explain to you a few of the different things you might see, and some of them will seem really extreme, but like I said, this is just the way that your rabbits communicate, so understanding it is the best way to try and go about it. So we have already talked about really positive signs. I kind of put everything else into two other categories just because even things that are neutral tend to be things that seem really scary to people on their first time bonding. So something that people seem to be really unsure about is mounting. When your rabbits hump each other, even females will do this. It's a way to show dominance. It's perfectly normal, and as long as your other rabbit isn't extremely uncomfortable, as in squealing or trying to attack. And generally, in this situation where a rabbit is humping non-aggressively, it is a way of saying, "I want you," and that's a good sign. Another thing that is often misinterpreted is nipping and chasing. These are also normal to establish dominance, but you will often be able to tell when a rabbit is aggressively biting at something compared to just nipping and kind of asserting dominance. I will insert some video clips so you guys can kind of see the difference. As you can see in the video, there was a small amount of chasing, which one rabbit allowed the other rabbit to be dominant and ran away. And then as you can see, there is a kind of attempt at mounting, and instead of biting, the rabbit is kind of nipping at the black bunny. And then you can, if you look closely, see that instead of biting or nipping, it turns into a small amount of grooming or licking, and then the larger rabbit is getting off of that bunny, and it was kind of allowed to establish its dominance. So that is something I wouldn't separate. I would allow it to happen just like it did, and that was just an assertion of dominance. I wanted to say thank you to Julia, who has Buns Inc. on Facebook if you wanted to check it out. She was the one who gave me the video, and that was also her buns in the video and in this photos. The light bunny is named Chompers, who sadly passed away sometime after the video, but the black bunny Beauty was able to fall in love with a new bunny who is named Cheese, I believe. And here is a photo of Cheese and Beauty. Although Chompers and Beauty took a little bit to get along, Cheese and Beauty were absolutely love at first sight, and there was no bonding needed between them. So now I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about actual negative behavior, but the most important thing to negative behavior is actually realizing the body language that leads up to it, because negative behavior is not something that you want to let happen and is something that you want to separate immediately. So being able to identify when this behavior is going to happen so you can stop it before it actually gets to the point of turning into a fight or a rabbit being really aggressively bit, you can look for things like their tail being up, their ears being back, and growling behavior. Sometimes you won't be able to recognize the behavior before it happens, and that's perfectly fine. If you get into a situation where you do end up having your rabbits both wanting to be the dominant one and they both end up getting into a fight, please make sure that you have gloves or some sort of protective material to separate them. I wouldn't continue to allow this to happen, so at this point, after something like this would occur, I would use something to separate both bunnies. I would possibly try and put them into something stressful like a carrier, shake them up a little bit, and reintroduce them. If this behavior continues to happen, I would take steps back from bonding. I would possibly go back all the way to the beginning where they are separate from each other. When you have a really difficult bond, this is when it becomes really important to identify and use areas to your advantage that work well. I find that a lot of people continue to use areas that continue to get negative responses, and they don't use areas long enough that they've gotten good responses from. So if there is an area, whether it's high traffic or a stressful environment like the bathtub with low traction, that you can continue to introduce your rabbits in that kind of area without too much trouble, I would do that. Otherwise, there is a point in time where rabbits are just unable to be bonded, and at that point in time, I would just keep them separate and maybe look for another bunny who could possibly be a better fit. Like I said, a lot of people do give up on bonding too early, so do try and go back to step one and reintroduce them. Don't just give up. It did take me 2 years to bond my rabbits, so I'm in no way trying to discourage you. I just want this to be really realistic, so if you have gone back and re-separated them for several months or several weeks and you've tried to introduce them again and you are getting behavior where they are seriously injuring each other or they need stitches, that is when you need to call it quits, and that bond is most likely never going to work. But other than that, if you have gone back and tried to reintroduce them and you got a neutral behavior, I would continue on with that bond and see where it goes, and it could possibly lead to something really strong in the future. I also want to mention that sometimes you may need to separate a bonded pair for other reasons. Normally separating a bonded pair is a really terrible idea, but in my case I did separate my two simply because Ruby is extremely old and Opal is very young and energetic. As you can see, their cages are still right up against each other, but this way if Opal wants to have fun and binky around, she's not going to bother Ruby at all with her arthritis, and she can just have fun and do her own things without chasing or annoying Ruby at all, who kind of just at this point just wants to relax and have cuddles. So I really hope that this video ended up being really helpful for you guys. I tried to get a lot of good examples for you. I know I couldn't possibly fit everything into one video, but if you have any questions or suggestions or just general comments, feel free to leave them below. If this was at all helpful to you, or you just enjoy seeing bunnies and want to see some more, please feel free to hit the like and subscribe button below. I also realize that a lot of you watching this are probably feeling kind of discouraged on your journey right now, so at the end of this video I'm just going to kind of include a bunny montage of bunnies who have been successfully bonded, just so you guys know that there are a lot of people out there who have gone through and experienced the same thing as you and eventually hopefully got to the conclusion that they wanted to. Thanks for watching. Bye!